Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are in the world, welcome and thank you for joining us. We are live at the Scottsdale Center for the Performing Arts for the inaugural US InCabin event. My name is Carl Anthony, founder and editor of AutoVision News and a longtime partner of Sense Media, the organizers of AutoSense and InCabin. Joining us today is Yashar Behzadi. He is the CEO and founder of Synthesis AI. Yashar is an experienced entrepreneur who has built transformative businesses in AI, medical technology, and IoT. He has spent the last 14 years in Silicon Valley building and scaling data-centric technology companies. Yashar holds over 30 patents or patents pending. Yashar, it's wonderful to welcome you to the program. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Tell us a little bit about Synthesis AI. Give us an overview and tell us about the work you're doing.
Sure. Synthesis AI is a 3-year-old company. We're based in San Francisco, and we're really much focused on a new paradigm for building AI, especially computer vision.
Right.
So just maybe a little bit of context on how these systems are built kind of historically.
Right.
So typically, the way you build computer vision systems is you go out in the real world and collect real world data.
Right.
So that typically means creating custom hardware, deploying that hardware, managing that hardware, collecting data for a long time, then having humans annotate that data, and then training your models. Of course, this is a very expensive process.
Sure.
It's going to take forever, and humans are only so accurate in the labeling. So Synthesis was started with the thesis that we could take the world of cinematic visual effects, coupled with generative AI, to create simulated worlds. And in these simulated worlds, then we can use to kind of train our computer vision systems with synthetic data. Right. So we're, for the first time, able to create vast amounts of diverse, photorealistic, perfectly labeled data to train our AI systems.
So let's expand a little more on the synthetic data. How does it help OEMs and tier one suppliers develop a vehicle that will prioritize safety, the user experience, and then ultimately privacy? What's the role there? What's the connection?
Sure. I mean, all systems in this space, generally speaking, with respect to AI as well, require data. Right. So the same problems that I described more generally are even more complicated in the in-cabin environment.
Sure.
One, because you have this variable geometry of the cabins. Every car is slightly different.
Yeah.
You have 100 or so different sensor configurations that various OEMs and tier one suppliers and hardware manufacturers are creating. And there's different locations that they can exist in. So you have a very difficult data problem. You need to be able to create data across all these configurations, and then capture it across a representative demographic of people, and specifically around certain behaviors that you want to be able to predict. So, for instance, for driver safety monitoring, a big key aspect is fatigue and falling asleep.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to obtain that data in the real world?
Yeah.
You can't have people driving around until they fall asleep. It's just not practical, of course.
Right.
So synthetic data is a way of simulating those environments, simulating those types of behaviors across a huge variety of different parameters, so that you can train very robust systems in this space.
Sure.
So for DMS, it's really around a whole bunch of representative drivers. So you want to span demographics, body shapes, body types, right? And then a whole bunch of behaviors. People talking on the phone, being distracted, people falling asleep, being fatigued, for instance. And the OMS capability is around, is there a child in the vehicle? Right, there are specific kind of occupant systems that you want to build as well. So in all of these scenarios, you need a lot of data across a broad set of things. It's very hard to do that in the real world.
At the press conference this morning, you announced enhanced capabilities to provide, and I'll quote from the press release, enhanced capabilities to provide synthetic data for a wide range of automotive use cases, including ADAS, DMS, and OMS. Can you expand a little more, Yashar, on the press conference this morning and what you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that we announced I think are really going to be enabling for the space is the first one is an expansion of the number of people that we can support in our system.
Yeah.
So we currently support 100,000 different identities, and these identities span age, gender, demographics, skin tone, body size. So that expansion, it makes sure that these systems are representative, they perform robustly, and it's by far the biggest data set in the space. So that's one very key announcement today. And the other one is an expansion of the various behaviors we're able to support.
Okay.
Right. And as we think of the Euro NCAP regulations, we want to make sure that all the key target areas are well covered, and that we have distributions around those to create the kind of natural variation you might see in the world as well. So that's another big expansion. And the final is the ability to configure camera systems, both on sensor type and location.
Right.
Again, going back to that variability that exists in this ecosystem, you have to be very, very robust to be able to simulate a lot of those different configurations.
You read my mind when you mentioned Euro NCAP. When it comes to Euro NCAP and NHTSA, the regulatory environment, how does that impact everything you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, this whole conference has really been catalyzed by regulations,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the whole industry is really rushing to basically put in what I call digital seatbelts, right? It's a list of capabilities that I think will really impact driver safety, reduce fatalities, reduce injuries, and this whole ecosystem is really activated to do that. So we have sensor developers here creating the camera systems. We have integrators, we have algorithm developers, we have the OEMs, right? And so those regulations are really driving everybody to really try to figure out a solution for this. And one of the biggest limitations to date has been getting the data to train your systems and knowing that they work, right? So I think this is really great that synthetic data is going to play a vital role in driving these types of initiatives over
Right. I want to go back to your data set just for a second. You mentioned the 100,000 different. Why is it important to have such a diverse data set with different genders and facial features? Why is that important, Yashar?
Well, you want these systems to work for everybody. Historically in AI, there's been an issue with bias, right? If you don't train your system on a representative data set, especially around kind of human kind of demographics, those systems don't work as well, right? And it's typically because of skin tones and specific geometric features, body types. These systems need to work for everybody if they're going to, because drivers are varied, right? So the data should be varied as much as possible.
Right. Your team comes from companies like Walt Disney, DreamWorks, and Lucasfilm. Yashar, how does that work in cinema? How does that transfer over to the automotive world?
So I mean, effectively, what we're doing is replicating reality, right? And the visual effects industry, has done this has amazing tools and has been doing this for obviously many years. So we need those skill sets. People who understand how to build digital humans, know how to understand to mimic reality and the materials and light and the physics of these different elements. So the part of our team comes from that world. The other part of our team are AI folks who are pioneers in generative AI. And when you put those two folks in the same room for the first time, you're able to just create this immense photoreal data at a scale that's required to actually train AI systems. So.
Yeah, it's just so neat, Yashar. So cool. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and sharing your expertise and thought leadership. From all of us here at AutoVision News and InCabin, want to wish you safe travels home. Let's try to do this again at a future conference.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
More to come from InCabin in Phoenix here on the AutoVision News LinkedIn page. From the Scottsdale Center for the Performing Arts, I'm Carl Anthony, AutoVision News.